Hi, everyone, and welcome to another distribution leader panel from Distribution Strategy Group. We've got two fantastic panelists that I'll bring in a minute, but first you should know my name is Ian Heller, and I am going to be your host today. I'm with Distribution Strategy Group, and we're delighted and honored to have a couple of amazing guests here. I hope you brought your questions. If you did, or if you think of any along the way, please use the Q&A button to send them in. I'll moderate the questions and get them into our panelists and introduce them into our discussion. This is an unusual opportunity to have access to two really brilliant leaders and speakers and thinkers when it comes to distribution strategy overall. They have some very thoughtful things to say about AI capabilities in the future of distribution. So we'll get to that in a minute, but first, got to do a couple of commercials. You know the drill. The first one is for DemandRx. This was invented by my genius business partner, Jonathan Bine. It helps predict end market demand, measure end market demand for all kinds of different geographies and product categories. And it's really an amazing tool. And you can define your ideal customer profile, target prospects from our database of 48 million companies, measure market share, figure out how to build sales territories. If you do sales coaching or sales management where you're doing wallet share gap analysis, well, it's great to have this kind of data because it's really facilitates a great discussion to help you understand how to direct your sales force's efforts among their accounts. Reach out to Jonathan at jbein at jbein at distributionstrategy.com to schedule a demo. I think you're going to find this very useful. It's really unprecedented, we believe, in the industry. Secondly, we have our second annual conference called Applied AI for Distributors. It's June 4th through 6th at the Chicago Marriott O'Hare. It's going to be another amazing event. I mean, we've taken last year's agenda and we've expanded it. I mean, we got great reviews last year, but this year we're doing cybersecurity in the age of AI. That's new. We'll have an investor panel talking about what investors expect from distributors when it comes to AI. We're bringing back Zach Cass, who's going to give us an updated version of his very highly rated talk. Zach actually got a 4.9 out of 5 in our post-event survey, which I've actually never seen before. That's a fantastic score. A lot of people said he was one of the best keynoters they've ever seen. He used to be head of go-to-market for OpenAI, the ChatGPT people. He really is a brilliant futurist and actually just a really great down-to-earth guy. And he's going to do like a half-hour presentation and an hour fireside chat where he takes audience questions, which is really, he did it last year. It was hugely popular. So I hope you'll join us. You can scan the QR code there or go to our website, distributionstrategy.com or appliedai4distributors.com. Tickets are selling very fast. Sponsorships are selling very fast. We do have group discounts, so I suggest you sign up as soon as possible. All right, now it's my honor to bring in our guest today. They are Mike Mortensen, President and CEO of ARG Industrial, and Steve Cosgrove, who's the founder and president of Cosgrove Partners. Now, Mike Mortensen is actually pinch hitting for Mike Powers. Mike Powers is, I think, Director of Digital Strategy and E-commerce or something. That's the title, Mike.
Right, yeah, e-com and digital, yeah.
Yeah, and he came down with strep throat and the flu at the same time. So our best wishes, Mike Powers, for a rapid recovery. And Mike Mortensen, thank you so much. I know with your schedule, you probably had to move a lot of things around, but thanks for pinch hitting for Mike. We really appreciate it. With that, why don't you give us a little bit about your background? We'll start with Mike, and then we'll go to Steve. You know, tell us about how you got into distribution, what you do today, what ARG Industrial does.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thanks, Ian, for having me. Yeah, my name is Mike Mortensen. I'm President and CEO of ARG Industrial. I've been in the industry and with this company for 29 years. Kind of started as a young man, got out of school at the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, and took a trip to Anchorage, Alaska, and you know, fell in love with the beauty and the grandeur of the state of Alaska. And then I met a young woman, and I was done. I was toast. And my old man said, "You can't live in my basement forever, so you needed a job. You need to get a job, and enough of this sightseeing and stuff." And so I started driving a truck for a little company called Alaska Rubber and Supply in Anchorage, Alaska. Had about 12 employees. And you know, it wasn't shortly after I started there that I really knew that distribution, especially in the vertical that we operate in, which is hose and fittings and lifting and rigging, was going to be a thing. I knew that I could do something with it. It was special. We provided solutions for customers, and we did some really cool stuff. And so as the company grew, I grew with it and was afforded opportunities. In 2006, I was just super pleased to be a member of the leadership team that transitioned the company to a 100% employee owned ESOP. And then we've been on an acquisition journey ever then, and ever since then put a bunch of different companies together. We were formerly known as the Alaska Rubber Group, which was a holding company we established that had many trade names underneath it, and have recently, just a little over a year ago, formed into one company and rebranded as ARG Industrial. And we're in 13 locations currently across the Pacific Northwest and Alaska, headquartered out of Anchorage, but we have locations um, in Washington, Oregon, and soon to be Idaho. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We've been on the digital transformation journey for about 5 years now, and AI is starting to become layered into every piece of technology that we're involved with and we see coming down the pipe. So excited to talk about it today.
Fantastic. It's interesting that now you have more locations than you had employees when you started.
Isn't that though? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been an amazing journey, and employee ownership is an incredibly powerful force for businesses, and it has really been the driving force of our culture and growth since 2006.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. Now, Mr. Steve Cosgrove. Steve, I think you and I have known each other since the early 90s, maybe even the late 80s. So it's been well over 30 years, and we're still on speaking terms. That's great. Hey, I wanted to take the audience through your background and what you're doing at Cosgrove Partners today.
So, similar to Mike, I actually started in distribution in hose and fittings. I was with a company called Kent Rubber Supply, which every spring break causes you to get a bunch of interesting phone calls from 14-year-old boys. And it's just one of the craziest things you would ever imagine. And in many ways completely inappropriate. But in all seriousness, I've spent 40 years in distribution. It's actually it was kind of fortuitous. I didn't see distribution really be my career, and I fell in love with it. I love the contact with people. I love the creativity. And over the course of that 40 years, I've worked for a handful of better distributors, including Grainger for a number of years. In fact, I'm doing this call from Orlando. I was with the Grainger team yesterday, and for the last few days, they had about 10,000 people in Orlando for their big show. By way of background, I started Cosgrove Partners 24 years ago. You can see more about us at cosgrovepartners.com. I won't do a commercial, but I have done about 40 acquisitions in the distribution space. I left Grainger to be CEO of a company. I did 23 acquisitions, bolted those on all together, and sold the company to sold Thrall Distribution to Ferguson. I was the founder of a company called Supply Force, which is a digital intermediary between very, very big customers and distributors. So the digital piece of my work is pretty extensive. We conduct diligence on behalf of private equity firms who are looking to acquire in the space. So often the work that we do is commercial diligence and technology diligence. There's not a private equity company in the world who knows anything about the technology that distributors run. So Mike laughs because he knows it's true, right? The fact of the matter is, some distributorships have pretty slick technology. Most are a little bit backward. And this is one of the most data intense industries there is. And product data, how you organize your information, how you organize data, that's the underpinning of AI. And if you don't really think about that seriously, you're just going to struggle. Our little company, we have 10 employees. We have 3 data scientists and a data analyst. We're very quirky, right? But in order to do the job we need to do, in order to do the kind of detailed market sizing and forecasting and penetration analysis and loss analysis and market planning and the kinds of things that Jonathan's now doing. In order to do those things, you have to have a data-rich environment, and then you have to find a way to make the data talk to you, and that doesn't just happen. There's a lot of infrastructure, there's a lot of investment, there's a lot of organizing, there's an arduous amount of cleaning data, which is not fun. But once you have it, it's amazing what it will tell you. So I'm excited about this discussion. It's always great to see you, Ian. And I love seeing Mike's big fish.
You have to look at Mike's LinkedIn profile because we left it out of the shot on this page. But in true Alaskan fashion, Mike's LinkedIn profile shows him holding a huge salmon, right?
That's what we do. That's what we do here, Ian.
Yeah, right.
We fish in the summers.
That's great. Okay, good. So again, I'll remind the audience there's a Q&A button. So I want to ask you guys something that's related to your comments. And it wasn't on the sheet of questions I sent out, so sorry if this is a curveball for you. But I just wrote a column arguing that AI actually has more potential to help distributors even in retail. And that's not to minimize the potential for AI in retail. The thesis is that it's been really hard to get technology solutions in distribution because it's such a more complicated business. I mean, the account hierarchies are complicated. The transactions are complicated in a way that retail transactions are not. The products themselves are much more complicated. And you need configurators. And in your line of work, and Steve, I know you've worked in it too, but Mike, in your line of work, there's very few of your transactions are take an item off the shelf, put it in a box, and give it to the customer. Right. So you can't just like execute a simple transaction online with a credit card as if you're Target stores. Right. So let's start with you and then we'll go to Steve. But Mike, do you think, do you see AI as being able to solve problems with technology that were unsolvable before?
100%. And to Steve's point, we have in industrial distribution, in a typical distributor, you have so many different data streams that are coming into your business, whether you know it or not, and potential to capture data that really can power decisions that make your business run more efficiently and help you provide a better experience to your customer. As you said, in our business, in our vertical, we're not doing a lot of pick, pack, and ship. Right. We have those products and those are ancillary to what we do, but we do light manufacturing and so much of it is custom and it almost happens at the point of sale. Right. We have what we call the broken hose business in our locations, all across our business where people are coming in and saying, hey, I need a new one of these. And there's typically not a part number in a catalog anywhere. There's sometimes you can't even see any data ley line on the hose. It's been worn off or it's covered in grease or paint. And you have to have people that really understand the product to be able to put the appropriate components together to get that customer back up and running. And so it's a super satisfying profession and something to get involved in, but it's very, very part number heavy. It's very, very intense with knowing what goes with what, and it takes a long time to get people up to speed. And so, where we see AI coming in is taking some of those data points once we can identify what we're working with to really help a new associate do what we call application engineering, where they're saying, okay, we've got this problem. We need to get, a fluid or a gas from here to here. What are the appropriate components that all go together to make that magic happen? And we've been, working on that since 2019 and working with configuration tools and are proud to say we have one that we just launched on our website that helps us, start to make that journey possible for customers to do themselves or internally help us upskill our employees much quicker to get them customer facing and helping. So to your point, do I think it'll really has a driving force in distribution? Yes, I think AI is going to democratize information dissemination within distribution, being able to access the tribal knowledge of the team to be able to provide custom solutions to our customers.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Now, Steve, same question. Do you see the potential for AI to solve problems in distribution that were very difficult to solve previously with technology?
I just think there's no question about it. I mean, when you get to the basics of a distribution business, you have real working capital challenges, right? You're buying lots of inventory, you're holding it for a while, you're hoping like heck that your customer buys it. But beyond that, you've got to worry about, do your manufacturers have the inventory, right? So some of the earliest things that we've began to develop are just predictive analytics in and around supply chain efficiency, and what are the implications for our working capital, and how can we begin to think about seasonality a little bit more proactively. When we went through COVID, for instance, there were massive shortages of parts. I'm in the plumbing business and the electrical business and the fastener business today. We have investments in 3 different sectors. Some of the supply chain challenges we were facing were almost insurmountable, right? But we were fortunate enough to be using Tableau pretty heavily. We'd built a lot of dashboards. We'd built massive data lakes, so we could go in and begin to archive information. We built much more rapid cross-referencing capabilities when we had inventory shortages. We were supporting the building trades, right? So you can't really be short of a 2-inch 90 elbow that's going to prevent an $800,000 house from being built. So we were able to really start to think differently about our product information. We came up with new solutions. To Mike's point, we started to create a couple of configurators to give us some new capabilities. But I started off by just talking about the working capital challenges we have. In today's world, where interest rates are fundamentally different than they've been in the last 15 years, if you're not thinking about how to manage your working capital, and you're not doing really, sophisticated trend analysis and thinking about what's the cost of money, what's the availability of capital, it's going to cause constraints. And, for me personally, again, I'm with Mike. I think that the challenge to get up to speed in AI is a little bit daunting. There's a big investment, right? So there's the investment in getting the data there. If you want to go out and hire a young person that's a data engineer, you're going to talk about a $200,000 income, right? It's not an inexpensive venture. With that said, I think you get the biggest ROI on this spend across your business. It helps you know your customer better. It helps you know your vendors better. We're using data that we're archiving out of the various businesses we're in to train so much more efficiently. It's hard to find a really good counter person these days. And if you have technical questions coming to your counter person and you haven't figured out a way to bring that information and make it available in a few keystrokes, you're in trouble, right? So, it's a provocative time for distribution, because we are being asked to take some chances. We're being asked to invest differently. And, one of the realities is a lot of the platforms in distribution don't have very good APIs. You can't even get the information out. It's a pain in the ear, right? So having smart guys help you do that is going to make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Mike.
Can I just tag on to that?
Yeah.
That's huge what you just said, Steve. The supply chain and how manufacturers and distributors are working together. I think the last couple years has just highlighted that, drawn a circle around it, big flashing lights. As we started our, digital journey, we thought, wow, we're way behind. And then we started working with manufacturers, and we're like, wow, like we're kind of all in the same boat. I think they're trying to solve some of the same problems that we are at the same time. And so that's always hard, because as distributors, we oftentimes for everything look to our manufacturers for help, right? Whether it's product help, promotion help, advertising, things like that. When it came to digital stuff, we were all kind of on the same, spot on the monopoly board. And I think going forward, and especially right now, the potential for distributors and manufacturers to partner around technology to make information available at the point of sale is huge. And I think that the distributors and manufacturers that work together to make that information available immediately, whether it's product detail information, specifications, whether it's availability, market sensitive pricing, making that available and sharing that demand, from the distributor back to the manufacturer. Like that partnership is going to supercharge some distribution companies. And I see AI being a part of that. But data is that's the thing. And you said data lake, and I mean most manufacturers and distributors don't realize they're sitting on data oceans.
Yeah.
It's huge how much we have, and putting guardrails and having good governance around that. I think that's step one. That's the biggest thing. And as you start to get into this, you realize just how important it is to have data that you can rely on. And you use the word API, and some people are like, API, you have to have those connections, between the pieces of software that you're using so they can talk to each other. If they don't, if you don't have as a distributor, if you don't have an ERP that has robust APIs and can integrate ultimately with all these pieces of technology, you're kind of stuck. And you spend a lot of time working on just plugging the wires in. And I know that from experience. That's the world that we've lived in for the past few years. And so it's complicated, but it is doable. And I think AI is really starting to rethink how a lot of these programs work. So I'm excited about it.
Your point about not being behind is really important, though, right? Because we all can kind of feel insecure. You go on Amazon and it already knows the stuff you're going to buy. It suggests your shirt size, and somehow it knows that I gained 4 pounds.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just kind of blown away. It's like, how in the world can you know that, right? So if you're running the average distribution company, you're like, gosh, how can I do that for my customer? Well, you have to realize that they've been investing in this for decades, and their data structure, the way they think about it, is fundamentally different, right? So, I mean, today we provide fractional BI teams to distribution companies because they don't know how to hire the kid. If you hired a data analyst, what the heck do you do with them? Where do we get
We
the
got to
data?
teach them to make hose first, right? We got to teach them to make assemblies first, and we got to teach them all the part number. No, yeah.
Oh, it's crazy, but the fact of the matter is when you get machine learning happening, the cost of that learning is so low, right? It's just there's so much more scale available. We live in a time that human capital is the hardest thing to have, right? So why do anything that doesn't make your human capital more efficient, right? You got to make them fast, you got to make them smart, and it's got to be fun and interesting. Otherwise, people won't stay in our industry.
Yeah, I love that.
I think it's
Yeah.
real.
All right, cool. So we got questions pouring in now. And by the way, we had a guest blogger on our site who compared adding AI to an employee as being like an Iron Man suit. It takes, if you do it right, it gives you these superhuman capabilities, right? Okay, we got a bunch of questions. Let me go ahead and jump in. Hi, Ron, good friend of the show, good friend of mine. And good friend of yours, Steve, RP. So good morning. Can you speak to the build versus buy aspect of AI? I know some are adding staff, but the speed to get up to speed, but it could take a long time to get up to speed. And you guys have talked about that a little bit. So you're doing fractional help. Steve, Mike, I'm assuming you're hiring people, but what's your general philosophy when it comes to AI? If you have one, if you've developed one yet, about, hey, we're going to make this stuff, we're going to buy this other stuff. Mike, you want to start? Then we'll go to Steve.
Yeah, well, so we've taken a little bit of an all-in approach. As I said earlier, we started a little over 3 years ago on building a configuration engine and doing some really unique things that made it agnostic to the brands of the products that we were selling, or the e-commerce platform we were on, or even the industry we were in. We really were thinking about it big. And we used a company outside of our company and industry to help us do that. But then as we've started this journey, we've had people that we've brought in, and even some employees that have transitioned away from other sectors of our company and have really become AI just like you said, they got the Iron Man suit on now, and with some of the technology that's available, they're actually building AI applications for our business today internally. And that, what Steve said, that cost of learning starts to decrease, right? We're not going out and spending, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars externally to the company. We're investing in these people that are now building technologies within and work processes, workflows that are AI enabled, that are just really, the return on investment on that is huge, because we're not only getting the product, the process that we're building, but we're also developing that internal knowledge on how to do this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and the configurators are interesting because formerly they came from manufacturers, but they only will do them for their own products. And in
Right.
your kind of industry where you're attaching different brands together, that's not enough.
Yeah, yeah, you have to have that. You have to have that kind of what goes with what. And,
Yeah.
in our vertical, we take multiple different manufactured products and put them together, and that what goes with what and how to make it go together and stay together, that's our value, right? And
Yeah,
so
right.
to be able to transmit that and help not only our customers but our employees get to that point quicker, that's been huge for us.
All right, and so Steve, make versus buy, and you're kind of in a unique position because sometimes you're owning a company and they're trying to make their own make versus buy decision, and sometimes your companies are turning you to buy your services for this stuff, right? So how do you
Yeah.
think? Do you have a way you think about this?
Well, I personally think that most companies need some help on the front end. You don't want to make bad investments, and there are so many sham software solutions out there, and they're selling futures at a level that's kind of hard to believe. Most people, when I say most, let's say 99%, do not really have AI in their business. They talk like they do. They say that they've accomplished these things. The fact of the matter is there aren't even enough chips being manufactured to power AI at the scale that people say it is. So, I think you probably want to get some help. Ultimately, you have to build your own solution, right? Because the software that you use, the tool set that you use, has to be reflective of the kind of decisions you want to make, right? So when you are thinking about AI applications, am I gonna do, some jargon and write marketing content? That's really easy, right? That's Chat GPT 4, and it's the easiest thing in the world. If you want to begin to get your toe in the water, populate a significant data ocean. I'm going to use that from now on. And use Tableau. Tableau Plus is coming out, which is going to give some new analytical tools. It lets you begin the work, right? But the data piece, and I know I keep hammering on this. Until you have really clean data, it's not going to work. And it's kind of a funny thing. I've been subject to it as much as anybody else. The manufacturer has a part number, and the distributor has an iteration of that part number. And then the customer has a third iteration of that part number. So something that I did to kind of protect my customer and not lose it to some schmuck down the street, so I changed the part number. That's made this work just so much harder, right? So at some point, there clearly is I personally, again, I think that there's probably a buy decision on the front end. And then I think you need to get the talent in-house to build something for yourself. And to jump off of that springboard, you're going to bring some young people into your business who don't know distribution, and that's not a bad thing. And in fact, in some ways, it's probably an advantage that they've got some other experiences.
Okay, Mike, did you want to add to that? I saw you laughing as he was describing the problem there.
Oh, when he was talking about part numbers, right? Like,
Yeah.
and it's not just that the manufacturer has a part number and then you change it and your customer has their, like, you have, in some industries, and ours is not unique here, you've got, 5 manufacturers that feed you basically the same thing, but they all have different part numbers, so
Right.
the part number game is really confusing, and that's one of the things that I think that AI is going to do with product attribution, right? That they're gonna it's gonna get away a little bit from part numbers and more towards actual specifications
Yeah.
that can be asked for. Just like Steve, you said a 2-inch elbow. Show me a 2-inch black iron threaded elbow, right? And let the customer make the decision which one's available and fits their price and specification needs.
Great. I'm going to go ahead, Steve.
I was sitting with a group of manufacturers reps 2 nights ago, and we were having this same discussion, right? And it's in everyone's interest to have common data, but no one really wants to step out and be the leader, right? So you look at a PIM. So if you're a manufacturer, your product information management system is one of the most cherished things you have, because if that PIM is populated with great data, you can stand up another distributor in a hurry, right? If you want to do digital commerce and you don't have great product information, you're wasting your time. You're just wasting your time. There are some sectors in distribution, plumbing is one, where the data is just terrible. And there are so many fashion choices, right? So if I'm an investor in a plumbing distribution business, it is so doggone hard. I'm an investor in a fastener manufacturing business. There aren't part numbers for fasteners. There are dimensions and there are materials. And, it's the complexity is way beyond what we should occupy in our minds. It's embarrassing to know what I know about part numbers, right? I wish that I could free up all of that knowledge and be able to use my brain for something else. Isn't it lovely to think about what AI can do for us in the future?
Yeah, free you from the tyranny of part number memory. So okay, I'm going to combine a few questions here because there are some questions about applications. So the general question from John is, what practical AI solutions and applications are you seeing in distribution? And then Ron wants to know specifically about using AI for the order to cash process and the impact on DSO. And then an anonymous attendee wants to ask about AI applications for inside sales and customer service. So John wants to know generally, where do you see the AI applications? Ron wants to know specifically with order to cash. And this other individual wants to know about inside sales or customer service. So that's a big question, but let me throw it out there. When do you guys want to start?
I can speak a little bit to some of the ground level uses that we're exploring. Right now we have 13 locations with material hitting our docks every single day, and it's got packing slips and paperwork attached, and I got people that are checking to make sure that the material is correct, and then they're going to a computer and they're hand jamming all of this stuff in and doing tons and tons of data entry. And so we're looking at technology that actually reads those documents, interfaces that data right into our technology that we can see, and doing some kind of jumping the queue, functionality where it's matching it with manufacturer confirmations before we even get an invoice, to start putting all that data together, not only for our receiving teams, but our AP team, to get rid of some of that manual process and get us the data where it needs to go faster. The other thing that we're working on, and it really speaks to the customer service, is AI-enabled co-pilots, right? If you've been on a website and used a chat bot, most people just shut them because they were terrible. They're getting a lot better. And it's amazing how many data streams that you can plug into these co-pilot applications to really be able to ask complicated questions about the products that you have, about applications that those products are good for, about the products that a customer has bought before, about their account, about, it's really any data that you have within your ERP or any other data stream that you want to feed to it, is available to the customer and the inside sales and customer service team. So just that data democratization, I think is where a lot of this is going to help our companies.
Yeah, I'll take a swing at the customer service as well as the order to cash cycle, right? DSO. Great. So one of the things that we typically begin with when we work with a distributor is we begin by setting some business goals. What would you like to accomplish? What insights would you like to have augmented, right? And we really think of it that way. We want to augment your decision-making process, right? So how can we do that? Well, we're going to stand up a system of cockpit charts, of dashboards. And those dashboards begin to give us different visibility than looking at a P&L or looking at your balance sheet, right? That's so flat. But if you look at 100 customers and you take a product line and you say, what's my penetration of XYZ into this NAICS code, right? How many of my salespeople are, one of the things I learned at Grainger is salespeople sell what they're comfortable with, right? When you've got a couple million product members, different salespeople sell different things because they sell what they're comfortable with. That, that shouldn't be an epiphany for anybody that's on the call today. But the fact of the matter is, if you want to see penetration analysis change, you've got to make that information very visual, right? So perfect application for Tableau. If you want to look at DSO, how do I trend it? How many times has a customer tripped over the 30-day number? How many times have they tripped over a 90-day number? Is that for certain order sizes? Is that for certain product groups? Is it for certain departments within the company where there might be a snag, right? But by being able to make that information, to visualize it, right? They call it visualization. If you talk to the tech guys, they talk about visualization all the time. Making information come to life and speak to you is so much different than just looking at your P&L, right? It's fundamentally different, right? So we stratify AR and all sorts of combinations depending upon the industry and depending upon the customer set.
I've heard that there are AI solutions that will help you understand, like when you look at your delinquent customers, which ones are worth a phone call and which ones you can just send an email to. And have you guys seen any of those solutions?
We build them.
You built one?
We actually build them, right? Because we try to track what kind of interaction gets a positive response from the customer.
Okay,
right. So a phone call, and you just learn. That's the whole point of this, right? So that's what machine learning is you have to teach it what you want it to know.
Yeah.
So the more you pack that data in, the easier it becomes.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. There's a quote that's pretty well known by Andrej Karpathy, who was Tesla's former director of AI. And he said the hottest new programming language is English. And, his point being that you really don't need to learn Python anymore. At least we're getting close to this, where, if you know how to do the right prompt in ChatGPT, it'll write the code for you. And so reflecting back on this make or buy decision that RP asked earlier, do you see that? I mean, I think, look, I don't think you can do that to write a whole pricing module or to write, to replace Tableau. But when it comes to connecting these tools with APIs, for example, do you think it's that AI is going to make it easier to connect your technology stack in more useful ways by using its code writing capabilities rather than having to program it all yourself?
Large language models is really where the focus is today, right?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what ChatGPT is. And I mean, we use, well, when I say we, that's the royal we. I actually don't do anything. But our team is architecting software solutions. We're trying to find what's the right API to use.
Yeah.
We're writing code that's AI enabled today. I'm sure Mike is. I think anybody in this space is doing that.
Yeah.
And it's evolving rapidly, right? But if you think about the early days of some voice to text capability and how sloppy it was.
Yeah. Right.
It's all of that input. That's the machine learning. That's, you really have to think of yourself as the teacher, right, and your application as the student. And if you're teaching it what you want to learn about, then you're going to get a much better result in the long run.
Hey, Mike, Ted wants to know, he says many distributors still do not trust suppliers with sharing data that could then be shared with competitors. So a lot of times it's POS data, right? So distributors don't want to share it. But it feels like in this new era of AI where sharing data becomes really essential to getting the most out of the tools, that reluctance to share, which could be genuine, right? Maybe it really happened. And you feel like I can't trust that supplier anymore, or I'm not going to trust any supplier because I know one of them gave my pricing data to a competitor or whatever. Is this becoming less of a concern over time? Is there something that distributors can do about it?
Well, I would not suggest people to not protect themselves. You definitely are not going to want to do business with people you don't trust with, and I would definitely suggest having a legal framework around information that you're sharing. However, we look at this in what Mike Powers calls the gold bar syndrome. And we first noticed this even just with product data. We had manufacturers that didn't want to participate in our PIM initiative and work with a third party syndication company to provide just flat file data on product information so that they could give it to us in a form that we could absorb and then display on our website that sold their product, right? Like there's this gold bar syndrome, like that's our value. If we let that out of the gate, we don't have any value. And I'm here to tell you that that's not why most customers shop at specific distribution companies. There's so much more value that you're providing than just a product at a price, right? And if you're not, then that's some introspection that you need to do on your business model and where you're providing value. So I think, the value of data and the value of information is sharing it and getting that out there. And that's where the power happens, is when you're able to share that information with customers where at the point that it provides value. And so if you can partner with your manufacturer, if there's a foundation of trust and you feel like you're adequately protected there, that data sharing across that partnership, like that has the chance to supercharge your value. We're seeing that in bits and pieces in our business now. And when I see it, I'm like a dog on a bone. I'm like, we want that more, because it's producing a much better outcome, not only for our stakeholders within our business, but for our customers, which is ultimately most important as we try to, as distributors, that's what we do. We drive it's value add. We're trying to find that value to continue to hold open that profit margin that allows us to do what we do.
Steve, you want to add anything to that?
I think back to the time that you and I worked together, Ian. There was a functioning definition for how distributors created value: convenience, break bulk, assortment,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and finance, banking, right? That is so antiquated. If you're not willing to share data, if you're not willing to do some peculiar services to create incremental value for your customer, you're on the endangered species list. You just don't know it, right?
Yeah.
And I get very frustrated with people who hoard information. I sit on the boards of 6 manufacturing companies, right? Some of those have enormous direct shipment operations, right? So the distributor gets an order, they send it to the manufacturer ships the order to the customer, and then some distributors will only allow you to ship to them. It seems like they're the ones that are always yelling at you, right? Because they can't get something fast enough, right? But you could usurp 3 or 4 days of shipping time just by allowing the manufacturer to direct ship on your behalf, right? The mindset is dated. So, when I shared convenience break bulk, right? That was how distributors thought about creating value in the 80s. In 2024, if you're not thinking about data utilization, if you're not thinking about providing unique insights and how you could shape the life cycle of a piece of equipment, how you could cause maintenance to be different, how you can cause shipping to be changed, you're not going to win. So Mike, you said it. You called it democratization. I agree with you completely. It levels the playing field and lets you go compete with the services and the people, right? I mean, ultimately, this is a people game. What we're talking about is how to use technology to make our people more efficient.
And to make our people more people, right? Like, I spent a lot of last year attending multiple conferences and webinars and everything, and it really culminated in Ian in your event in Chicago. And I heard in every single one of those that AI was going to allow human beings to become more human, right? And so you said it perfectly, Steve. This is a human business, and people buy from people, but how are we using this technology to take some of the computer tasking away from the people getting that information up front and center and applying it in the right place at the right time. Distributors, it was like you said, it was about having the right product in the right place at the right price, right? That was value. And I can tell you that product information, I've sat with manufacturers when we were really trying to pull product information from them, and I said, listen, it's not enough that you make a great product anymore. You have to have great product information, and that product information will determine which manufacturer's product that we put in our business. If we can get your product and it's great, but you have no information, we're kind of, that's the boulder in the stream. It doesn't allow us to pass that on through the value chain. So having that information is critical. Being able to share it with our people is critical. Helping our people understand, all the way to the front line, this technology and what we're trying to do with it, that's super critical too. Because if you alienate your people with technology, you're shooting yourself in the foot. I love the Iron Man analogy, using this to wrap it around your people to make them even more powerful in your business.
Yeah, I wish I'd thought of it. I wish I could remember who wrote it, but it was in a recent column on our site. So John has a suggestion here, or an idea on the topic of talent and machine learning and structured data. What about this idea? What if you paired up a young data scientist with an experienced integration data architect? And so you got the sort of the savvy old veteran from your business. I shouldn't be speaking in age terms, but you know what I mean? These tend to be true. And a data scientist who maybe doesn't have the background in distribution, but understands machine learning principles. Would that yield benefits in your organizations?
I mean,
It,
no
it,
question.
it is. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, Steve, you go ahead.
I mean, no question. That's exactly what we do, right? So when we're providing fractional BI, we're not. We may report out to the CEO. We're working with some smart dude in the company, right? Who knows all the parts, and he's probably in supply chain. He's probably in IT, and you're beginning to architect things. But our BI person doesn't know anything about your business at the beginning, right? So if you don't have that collaboration, we don't have the partnership. If you don't have just there's a spirit about this, right? And it's like, we're going to build something special, and this is really going to be fun. I think the more energy you pour into that integration between that really experienced person and the technology savvy person who comes to bear, the more fruit it bears.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're experiencing. We had a young man in our business that came in and showed a lot of promise and liked the product and liked the people and got into sales, and then was doing outside sales and was a little frustrated with that because he was very process oriented. And then he wanted to, get into the digital side of our business. And so we paired him with that team and the director of data management and freed him up. We said, okay, what tools do you need? Let's look at this. And he was really excited. He was at your conference, and man, I'd never seen a young person's eyes on fire like that. Like, he thought he had just, grabbed the tiger by the tail, and I'm like, when I see that in our business, I'm like, go, let's do that. Because he is now taking these tools that are available and really doing some super cool stuff in our business that I never thought that we could do internally. Right. Yeah. So, and he has that kind of knowledge of what our business is, where our value drivers at, which I think is super important. Because to your point, Steve, there's 1,001, software offerings that hit my inbox every day. Right. And most of them are overpriced, underperforming, whatever. But to really know where the value is in your business, that's the key to where to start experimenting with some of these things. Because you can go over and buy a software solution, and it may or may not work, but even if it does, it may not be hitting that real value note that you're driving towards in your business. So having somebody on the inside that really knows what you do and how it makes it click, and then pairing them with either internal resources or external resources that make sense, that's where the power's at, in my opinion.
All right. So go ahead, Steve.
I was with a business yesterday, and their value drivers are speed and convenience and creativity, right? Those are the two things that really make a difference. And so they have built some custom manufacturing. They're not dissimilar to you. in your business, but they built some custom manufacturing. They're often responding to a customer's quote request in 15 minutes, and their competitor is responding in 2 days, right?
Yeah.
So they get the order before the competitor ever responds because they've taken the time to say, look, we really create value by being fast and by being creative. So they might not give you the exact answer you're looking for. It might not be that I've got that black 90-degree elbow, right? But I've got a gray one, and I can have it for you tomorrow, right? And it's going to have the same form fit functional equivalent. And why not do that? It's just, you can do so much with data availability and then the human creativity. And to me, when you liberate that creativity by having data available, that's what makes it human, and that's what makes it fun. I mean, and fun matters.
Good. Okay. So last area, and this one's not as fun, is cybersecurity in the age of AI. Okay. So we have a whole session coming up in the in the June conference, but so a couple of problems. One is ransomware, and they're getting more clever. There are ACH hijacks. But the one that I've seen lately is people using deep fakes to pose as, executives, as customers. So you can imagine one of your inside salespeople gets a call from a customer they've spoken to hundreds of times before. And the caller ID is correct, and there's a confirming email that seems to come from the correct address, and it's a $50,000 order, and it gets delivered to a location where it's just stolen and it's gone. Okay. Without giving away any trade secrets about your defenses, have you thought through how you're going to, counteract this, evil AI with good AI?
It's, again, I sit on some boards. Cyber governance is so complicated. Even your insurance vehicles that you buy are complicated. You think that you might be protected against an ACH getting hijacked, and you file for your insurance and you find out there was actually a carve out, right? I mean, it is so difficult today. I don't know of a good solution. Human diligence is everything. You can become complicit to theft, so training your people, being super diligent about it. I'm sure eventually there'll be viable AI tools, but bad guys use technology faster than good guys do, right? So you look at some of these criminal organizations, they have better customer service than than Granger does. I mean, if you've been held ransom and you pay them, you're back up in 15 minutes, and they'll even tell you that you had a software glitch. It's shocking.
Yeah.
How the world.
Not to put a plug in for The Beekeeper, but I watched the movie The Beekeeper, and like that's the impetus of that is this call center of these people just ripping people off, and that exists. That's not Hollywood. That's out there, and there's people that are actually I am involved with a buying group in our industry, and we had a gentleman talking to us, said that he had a cybersecurity professional come and show him where his business was listed for sale. His business's data was listed for sale on the black web, right, on the dark web, right? Like, it's out there. There's people that are already in your business, whether you know it or not. And to your point, Steve, I talk to our IT professionals, I talk to our insurance professionals, and they're all kind of like, we want to help you, but kind of sort of you're on your own. And that human diligence is important. And just as much as I think businesses have done a better job over the last 20 years of creating a safety culture where we talk about safety in the workplace, we talk about it in our shop talks and in our meetings. I think cybersecurity is one of those things that just needs to be elevated to the point of a daily conversation with people, because it is getting so good. You talked about the deep fakes. I mean, I get emails weekly or phone calls weekly from my team saying, "Hey, is this you asking me to do this?"
Yeah, right.
It happens a lot.
So we'll just give this guidance because it comes from one of the smartest people I've ever met, who's a CIO in distribution. Make sure you do have ransomware insurance, because if you get ransomed, who are you going to call? And it's not just for the financial cover. It's because the insurance carrier will help you prevent that from happening. If it does happen, you'll be more prepared for it, and you'll have someone to call so you can you can get out of the problem. So, by all means, everybody should have ransomware insurance. All
Ian,
right.
one
Yeah,
point
go
on
ahead.
that, though.
Yeah,
Have your attorney go through your ransomware
that's
policy
right.
and look for holes. And then you're going to have to buy redundant coverage because every policy has some leakage
Yeah,
depending
right.
on the level of complicity that you have to the crime, right?
Yeah.
So I would really get a third-party verification on your coverage.
Excellent. Okay. Hey, if you guys can hold on for just a second, and the audience too, I just want to tell you about two upcoming programs. One is the next Wholesale Change show features Ian Gresham, who's the Chief Marketing Officer at Brady Plus. We're really excited about having him on the show. That's supported by White Cup, who supports an awful lot of our content, and they're good friends of ours. Then on February 28th, Al Bates, who is really probably the leading expert on profitability and distribution, has put together a program called the 4 Pillars of Profit Improvement. Dr. Al Bates is just a genius at this stuff, and he's a wonderful presenter. So I hope you'll join us then. That's brought to you by Epicor, another longtime sponsor of ours. So thanks to White Cup, thanks to Epicor, but today mostly thanks to Steve and Mike. Really appreciate you being on the show, and I hope you'll come back and join us again sometime.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ian.
It's a pleasure. I'm coming fishing, Mike.
It sounds great, Steve. Looking forward to it.
Me too. All right. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Hope you sell a lot of stuff between now and the next time we see you on a program from Distribution Strategy Group. Bye now.
Bye.